Against my statement, they put a 34% tariff on above what their ridiculous tariffs were already. And I said, if that tariff isn't removed by tomorrow at 12 o'clock, we're putting a 50% tariff on above the tariffs that we put on.
Yeah, E is for escalation, and there it is. Another look at the markets here. The TSX up by 180 points. The Dow is up by 754 points. A big rebound after a painful three-day sell-off, one of the worst in decades because of Donald Trump's trade war that he launched basically against the world last Wednesday. Now the president, you heard there, warning China to back down from its plan for counter tariffs on the United States. China signaling it has no plans to do so. So right now we are on the verge of a trade war. More tariffs are coming tomorrow, and the president basically saying if China doesn't back down, he would slap the Chinese with a 104% tariff if you add it all up. Let's bring in CTV's Scott Hurst. So topsy-turvy market yesterday. Now we're seeing a big rebound. Seems investors think there may be off-ramps, possible deals in the making.
Todd, a lot of concern, notably when we mention the potential standoff here against China. But when we look at the stock market today, what a difference a day can make compared to the last few days where we saw a significant sell-off. And so today, the stock market appears to be bouncing back. As we look at the live board of the Dow Jones, up 750 points today. The Toronto Stock Exchange, the TSX, up about 178 on rising hopes that the U.S. could reach trade deals, potentially lowering or lifting some tariffs over time. Now, we have heard from the U.S. president. He's been asked if he has any plans for a pause on the widespread tariffs. He says that's not something that they're looking at right now, as the U.S. president has shown few signs of backing down on the widespread tariffs, despite the mounting pressure on the financial markets, because we're also hearing from top administration officials that upwards of 50-plus countries targeted by U.S. President Donald Trump's new tariffs have reached out to potentially begin negotiations. And that has pumped up the markets a bit today after those significant losses over the last few days, Todd, on the heels of Donald Trump's announcement of sweeping so-called reciprocal tariffs on dozens of U.S. trading partners.
Yeah, and so we know that the U.S. and China are the world's two big economic superpowers. Trump has long had an issue with what he calls China's unfair trading practices, huge surpluses, flooding the world with cheap goods. Now he has this deadline here, and the Chinese don't seem to be blinking.
Todd, it appears that the Chinese are not backing down, so it looks like we are going to quite a significant standoff, as you mentioned, between the two world's largest economies. China's response really turning this into an ultimate trade showdown. Donald Trump threatening sweeping additional tariffs upwards of 50% if China doesn't pull back on its retaliation. He says the U.S. then will impose that 50% tariff on top of the so-called reciprocal tariffs that were announced last week. The Commerce Ministry said the imposition of so-called reciprocal tariffs on China are completely groundless, and calling this a bullying practice by the U.S., saying its countermeasures are aimed at safeguarding its own interests. Smartphones, computers, lithium-ion batteries, toys, video game consoles, that makes up the bulk of Chinese exports to the U.S., and China has already announced retaliatory tariffs, and the ministry hinted its latest statement that more may be coming. So even though we are seeing some hope on the stock market that some deals could be made, when it comes to these sweeping reciprocal tariffs, it appears the two largest economies are heading to a significant standoff in this trade dispute, Todd.
All right, Scott Hurst. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Todd.